Today's episode, if you are missing out, is sponsored by Fiverr. You may know Fiverr as the preferred source for freelance services, but did you know that they also provide online courses as well? Learn from Fiverr is an online, on-demand video classes platform specially tailored for freelancers and professionals. All classes are taught by top experts who are distinguished in their fields. These courses contain practical and comprehensive knowledge. By taking the course, you'll level up your skills and grow professionally. And by successfully passing the course's final quiz, you'll showcase your new capabilities. And the best part? Pay only for courses you want to take, with no monthly fees. Visit our show notes for more information to see if there's a Learn from Fiverr course for you. Every course you enroll in using our link goes directly to making this show better. Thank you for your support.
And now, on with the show.
Gentlemen, lots of movies turn people into legends. What's your favorite movie that deconstructs a legend and makes them human again?
There's a lot of options for this one. So I went to recent history, and not within a movie released recently. I'm talking about within recent history of this show. My pick is Tombstone, because as we got into in that episode, there's a lot of movies and TV shows and books and blah 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 about the great old legend of Wyatt Earp and the gunfight at the OK Corral and all of that stuff. And they all paint Wyatt as this good guy who's doing things for the right reasons and all of this shit. And I just love that it's subtle. It's not didactic. It doesn't hold your hand telling you all of this stuff. But Tombstone is so great at just showing you that Wyatt is selfish, greedy, and has no real interest in being a good guy. That the only reason he gets involved in the gunfight and the wiping out of the cowboys in the end is personal revenge. There's no honor in what he does. Nothing he does is for the betterment of anyone other than himself. He is a kind of a piece of shit. And I think that's pretty refreshing for especially a movie that in the Western sphere, like the Western genre, is almost a bit like Scarface, where a lot of people kind of just miss the point of Tombstone, and they think, yeah, Wyatt Earp's a great guy, yeah, Wyatt. Bleh. Tombstone's a little more honest about that. It's a little more honest about Doc being a real scumbum, but in a way having more honor than Wyatt. I think Tombstone is a great example of that.
Interesting, Tom. You know, in the pantheon of cinema, and so many films in so many different genres, in so many different time periods that seek to deconstruct a legendary figure. You chose a movie about a famous cowboy who was mythologized. I'm going in a different direction. I'm choosing a movie about a famous cowboy who was mythologized. A couple decades before Tombstone, though, the bicentennial was coming up in America. So a lot of mythologizing about America, the American West, and all of that. Robert Altman decided he wanted something to say. He had something to say about that. And so he creates one of my favorite Altman films. It's not brought up as much as some of the more established classics like Nashville and MASH, but I really recommend people check it out. Buffalo Bill and the Indians is the title. It stars Paul Newman. He's ostensibly playing Buffalo Bill, even though nobody is actually credited by a name. They're just called the star, the director, what have you. And it's all about the Buffalo Bill Wild West shows that created the myth of the West, because that's why all of our Westerns, all of our stories come from these Buffalo Bill shows where Buffalo Bill would kind of show up and go, let me tell you how we fought the Injuns. And the show, it ultimately is a film depicting how sad and pathetic Buffalo Bill was, and this whole enterprise that it depicts Sitting Bull and these Native Americans as the actual valiant warriors, while these men just want to play pretend in a circus tent to entertain Grover Cleveland. It's an extraordinary film. The ending shot is just one of my favorites, so I highly recommend folks check it out. Buffalo Bill and the Indians is my answer there. Every year since 1989, the Library of Congress has selected 25 films to add to the National Film Registry. The criteria? The films must be culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant.
Each week on You're Missing Out, we take a look at one of these films to try and get to the heart of why they were selected and why they still matter.
This week, we're hitching a camel through the Arabian desert with an old friend. Returning guest VyceVictus is back for the 1962 epic Lawrence of Arabia.
Our guest today only wrote in the little blurb for me to read, Vice is good, but if...
Which is true. It's true. He is good.
If he's not going to plug his podcast, I will. He is one of the hosts of Action for Everyone, which is my partner and I's cat's favorite podcast. This is a fact. We'll get into it. VyceVictus joins us today to discuss Lawrence of Arabia. Vice, thank you so much for joining us once again on the show.
Honestly, it's great to be back again. Good to see you guys again. It's been a long time.
Way too long.
Yeah, seriously. And it's funny. I tell the story. I just quickly. I forgot we do this today, so I had to see the movie quickly. But you can't see a movie quickly at all. There's a very strange paradox going on right there. But that's how we roll. That's how I do stuff nowadays. It's kind of off the cuff.
Do you remember the last time I saw you, Vice? The last time we saw each other in person?
Oh crap! Where was it? I forgot.
Because it was the craziest thing. As me, James, and Anthony were walking out of the AMC in the city, having seen Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah.
You and who else? Who were you with? We just see you walking down the street, and we just go, that can't be him. Out of all the fucking movie, and you just walk. It's like, there he is, and just like, oh, if I wish I could have seen Top Gun Maverick with Vice. There he is, walking into the next screening. Perfect.
Weirdly, Tom, if I remember you telling me, the only way you knew it was him was you saw a hand reach down and pull a cheeseburger out of his pocket. That's you were like, that can't be him. And he wasn't in the theater yet. I know.
Well, he wasn't in the theater yet, so the cheeseburger was firmly in the pocket. Once he gets in his seat, then the cheeseburger is unleashed upon the world.
If you're only a listener of our show,
I'm a pocket burrito guy, by the way.
If you're only a listener of our show, that probably means nothing. But if you are an Action for Everyone listener, that's like, that we just threw in one of the recurring segments, right? We just did a little,
Not even a segment; it's the truth.
Yeah,
pocket food makes movies better. You can't spend $8 for a pizza that sucks shit. You gotta get actual good. Go to make the Bo Burger in the air fryer. Put together
$8. Excuse me, $8 for a pizza at a movie theater? That's like $17.
Oh Christ, Jesus. Exactly.
$8 for popcorn. Come on now. We're not made out of doubloons here. Let's go. Come on.
Before we get into Lawrence, because I do want to acknowledge this, because we haven't had a chance to talk about this directly. It is true. I have a podcast. Our cat does not care about my podcast. But our cat, who is affectionately referred to as Action Cat by you guys, actually enjoys listening to your show. I have shown you video of this because the cat, we call her Action Cat because the cat enjoys watching action movies. We think it's because she likes watching arms flail around or whatever. One time, my partner was watching Blade on her laptop, and the cat walked over and just plopped her ass down and stared at the screen and was just transfixed by it, didn't leave for the full runtime, which I sent you a picture of.
Yeah.
And then we thought, oh, you know what would be cute? You guys at Action for Everyone put out a video episode of your podcast talking about Blade, wherein you also pull out a real sword. And we thought, well, this will be cute. Let's take a picture of the cat in front of the laptop while the podcast is on. She'll probably walk away in a couple minutes, but this will be cute. And then what happened was the cat not only stayed and watched, but started purring. I sent you and Mike the video, like the cat listening to you guys and watching the show just started purring, which is a very weird experience that this cat looks so tranquil and content while you yell the words, "Where's your sword? Where's your dick, man?" If you have that on mute, you're like, this is a really sweet image. This could be a Hallmark card. And then you hear what you're actually saying that the cat's responding to.
Well, it's pretty fitting that of the two shows, the one that neither of us are on is the
Yeah,
one that
so-
knows how to make a pussy purr.
Take it to the bank. You heard it here first, ladies. Love you, wife.
See, I would love if on the video we just saw the door slowly creak open. Just-
No, we don't even see the door slowly creak open. We just see smoke starting to rise from under the door.
Oh,
yeah, so I just wanted to address that. Obviously, this is also the one room of the apartment the cat is not allowed in, so she won't be joining us. I'm sorry, but Mike has told me that there's a standing offer that she can be a guest on an episode of your show sometime. If we could ever
oh,
figure out. He said, if we could ever figure out how to rig the mic, might be
you just
tricky.
take over my spot. I'm gonna take a day off. Shit.
Shit, the cat's gonna get invited on before me. Goddamn.
Cat's better than me anyway, probably. Yeah, I suck at this.
I would genuinely love to watch that episode where the cat's filling in for you, but they never address it. Your listeners are just like, I don't know what happened. Vice had nothing to say about the new Common writer, and at some points it sounded like he dozed off and started making little pig noises with his nose. It was very weird. Occasionally, he tried to do a half meow, but it just sounds like he's going.
I guess he ate some oxtail before recording this episode. He's feeling very relaxed.
So all that to to say, we're so glad you joined us because you are, in a sense, kind of our unofficial war correspondent here on You're Missing Out. We have always had you on to cover a war film because that is one of the things that you focus on in your work as a film. How would you want to call it? Film critic, essayist, academic, whatever. What category do you want at this point?
Because you asshole my underwear at this point. No, I mean I don't know. It's hard to say because I guess my main gig is the podcast, but I'm not even sure anymore. Just maybe film correspondent is the best thing.
Okay.
'Cause, when I say I'm out here on the streets, I mean it. I'm trying to go to festivals and stuff. As we heard earlier, I'm like, look at she left. You see me out of Top Gun, But and then the other part is as we're talking now, what movie we get into. The other part is that it's been what fucking 2016, 7, 8, yeah. Well, how many years? So I got out the army. So some of the stuff is fading, but some of it is as fresh as yesterday. And so I don't know. On one hand, it's weird to I can only leverage my experience for so long, and yet, as we'll get into today, some of this shit is timeless. Like the shit that the stuff that T. Lawrence will experience and some of those same themes and elements. That stuff is as fresh as ever, even today, even now, even here in the civilian world, or in the back in the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very strange. Yeah, maybe dumbass movie correspondent is my current title. Because it seems to be fitting.
In season 1, you joined us to talk about the best years of our lives, the pivotal World War II film. In season 2, you came on. We took a trip to Germany in World War I for All Quiet on the Western Front. Little did any of us know that a remake was going to come out and win a bunch of Oscars. Some might say too many. That's up for debate. But in any event, you were in for that, and now this season, we had to have you on for Lawrence of Arabia, which is one of the definitive. I mean, weirdly, I don't think when people bring up war movies, I don't think Lawrence of Arabia is brought up as often as you might think, because so often when people think about war, they're often focused on soldiers in fatigues and all of that, and this gets classified much more as epic than war.
I don't think it's really talked about as a war movie at all, and to the point where it even surprised me a little bit. Not once I thought about it, but oh, we're bringing Vice on for Lawrence, and oh yeah, it is a war movie. Because it is such a long movie, and in the first before the intermission, there's the one battle scene on Aqaba, and the rest of it's slow trudging through the desert, showing how harsh this environment is, all of that. It's not even getting into the kind of the politics, but more of the politics of all of the tribes in the desert. And then in the second half, you get more kind of clearly defined war stuff, him blowing up the trains and raiding everything and all of that stuff. Then you get the politics of what's going on behind the scenes with Europe and all of this shit. So, I mean, because if you want to think about it in like mathematically, a small percentage of this movie is actually about like quote unquote war. There's not much battle in this movie, but politically and in terms of like Vice was saying, like the things that are timeless about war and the experiences of war and being in a strange land and all of this stuff, it's it's timeless. It's stuff that does make it very firmly in the war the
And
subgenre.
and I would say it kind of ties into the first one that we did with Vice, Best Years of Our Lives,
Yeah.
because obviously there's no combat in Best Years of Our Lives either. It's all about these men who experienced war and were scarred from war coming home. And what Lawrence is ultimately about is, okay, we're going to do a movie about a guy who will never be able to come home from the war because he doesn't have a home. Like, he just has he doesn't fit in anywhere. It's part of what
It's
attracts me to
kind of the perfect middle of the two movies
Yeah.
Vice has covered beforehand, because it is very much not being out of the war like Best Years of Our Lives, where they're home, quote unquote, and that they're out of the battle. And All Quiet on Western Front is all just the horrors of the battle, where this is a good middle ground of, it's not always at this tense, like, oh, something's going to happen and we got to worry about what's going on, but it's got some of that stuff. So it's this interesting middle ground between the two, I think.
So
There's
yeah, please.
there's a it's one of the things I noticed about it is that well, for one, like for our current time frame, I'm surprised that yeah, I guess it's thought of more in the as a anti-imperialism or imperial criticism text.
Mhm.
But I think that, and maybe not, and honestly, I guess more brought up nowadays as like as a punchline or a, a bullet point in arguments. Like people will say, "Oh, I don't want to watch Avatar. Is this Lawrence of Arabia in space or whatever?" Or like
Yeah.
scribbling off this like white savior stuff. So they'll say that, but then like that also implies that, well, one, they're not paying attention to Avatar as dumb as it might seem, as actually say
Yeah.
some shit. But two, it also like they're not paying attention. They didn't pay attention to the original movie. Like
Yeah.
that's not what Lawrence of Arabia is
It is
about.
in
Like I
fact
mean,
It is in fact wildly, I would say, not ahead of its time in terms of like, obviously we know this, but like for a major motion picture, right?
yeah.
To not only not be a white savior movie, but to explicitly deconstruct that concept. I mean, there is
Well, I guess
something, yeah,
yeah. Maybe it's difficult. Maybe it's not to say that it's not. It's like I mean, because it is about that.
Yeah.
Like it's like yeah, it's like exploring the whole concept itself. So like, it's not whether it is or isn't, but like, what is a white savior? And is like one of the
Yeah.
prime examples of history. So it's like it's exploring that without. Yeah, it's so really like I guess we always hear the if showing something is not condoning it.
Yeah, depiction is not endorsement.
Exactly. So there's that thing. It's like you gotta show it to like see, it's about you gotta show the story, but that's not what it's like meant for. It's like exploring this whole
Well,
thing in depth.
it's almost like what Scorsese does with his movies, in that certain vein, like Goodfellas, Casino, Wolf of Wall Street, where it's gotta get you into the world and kind of get you into understanding why everybody in each of those tribes kind of fell under Lawrence's spell before pulling the rug out from under you and being like, no, this guy's kind of a weird piece of shit who knows he's a piece of shit. And multiple times throughout the second half of this movie, he's like, take me out of the desert. I like this shit too much. I'm going to become a fucking maniac. Please, God, help me. And they're just like, no, that actually sounds good for us, what we want.
Well, I mean,
So keep being a gigantic freak. And when you say major motion picture, I did this math because I rewatched it with Kyle because I insisted he watched it at my house because I have the 4K disc, big ass TV, and the surround sound. Looking up and then doing the inflation, this movie cost $15 million in 1962 money, which inflated today is a little over $150 million.
Mm.
It made $70 million in 1962, which is over $700 million in today's money. So it cost. I mean, that is they did not spend that kind of money back then. That is an insane
Yeah.
amount of money, and it's still crazy to think that inflated, it costs less than half of Indiana Jones 5, and it doesn't look like shit.
Now, I to
But
get into that.
that is a
Yeah,
major
no.
motion picture. Like that is
Well,
maybe the biggest event or like whatever since Gone with the Wind. Like they
that's
didn't
what I
spend
want to
money
get
like that back
into.
then.
But before, so we're gonna do our usual thing. And by that I mean I got to read the registry statement. But before I do, I want to just cover this ground. Tom, you're talking about major motion picture. I think it is this thing, and I'll just speak for me a little bit, and I'll ask you guys. But like, it is one of those movies like Gone with the Wind, I think, where like once you start liking movies or deciding like I care about this medium, it's one of the ones I would say, hear about even long before you ever see it. Like the name carries weight. So with that
Oh
in
yeah.
mind, I want to start um, Vice, starting with you, and then and Tom to you. But before I even ask, like, when was the first time you saw this movie? In addition to that, I just want to know what was your familiarity with this movie in terms of the mystique around it, the reputation it has, just like your awareness of Lawrence of Arabia even before you ever saw it, and then obviously when you finally saw it.
The first part, cinematically wise, or like culturally, like this it's as a spectacle. The match cut, like it's called that because of
Yeah.
this movie. I think, there's techniques about it and its scope and scale of it. I knew about it, and it just you can see other like homages and references in other movies. One of those things, even as a kid, you may not have seen it when you're younger, but like you can see people are looking at it. But
There's
the
a
other
big
part
one
of
this
it,
year.
yeah, yeah. But the other part of it is just in the army, like we that whole going native or going rogue or that whole that it's just, the actual military history of it does become part of our lexicon, part of our to some degree based on where you go, part of the actual academic portion as well. Like I didn't do any specific reading, or there was no specific assigned reading about T. Lawrence in the classes I went to, but it is part of the long chain of military history that we reference in actual operations. So just having those two prisms of seeing it has carried this much weight. So that now that I finally now this year today finally seeing it, and well actually it's actually funny. I bought the Blu-ray years ago. I got when the first remaster or whatever came out. So and I was saving something special, so of course I had to save for this. But yeah, but also just like I did think I do want to give it myself some time, which sounds dumb because it's from like 1963 or whatever. Like, well, I guess I needed. I was mentioning earlier, I needed the years away. I guess kind of get ready for it. I wasn't sure what to expect. And sure enough, and I'm glad I did actually, honestly, because it was not that stuff was coming back per se, but just having some distance of it actually gave me a little more clarity of some of the what's meat of it that I get into. So yeah, just that both the cultural part and the actual historical part has been part of me with me for a while.
Tom, when was your first time seeing it, if you recall, and what was your kind of awareness of it prior to that?
Well, I mean, my awareness of it was just one of those things that it was just always one of those movies talked about. Whenever you'd watch one of those like top 100 movie things on A&E or whatever, or you see like the Empire list or the AFI list, as the older we got and the more technology started picking up, and we'd had access to the internet and message boards and film Twitter became a thing and podcasts, and you get more and more, you just keep hearing about Lawrence of Arabia. It's one of those things, blah blah blah. And at a certain point, I'm a big collector of these of Blu-rays and now 4K discs and everything. So it was one of those cases of, well, I'm gonna wait until the Blu-ray comes out because I didn't really know much about rep screenings or whatever, and I really didn't care enough to like, oh, I'm gonna wait to see it on 70 or whatever. Like, I got a big TV. I'll wait till the Blu-ray, and the Blu-ray came out, and the reviews were great. Everyone's like, oh my god, it looks like pristine, like you have your own print of the movie, blah blah. And I watched it, blown away. Unbelievable movie. And then we were talking off mic. Me and you saw it 70 millimeter
Yeah.
at the Museum of the Moving Image in Queens. And it was great. You know, it was awesome. And it just solidified how much I think this movie is just one of the movies of all time. And then you get this. Then they put out a 4K disc about a year or two ago, which is even just better. Like I said, I watched it with Kyle. He could tell you it looks unbelievable. It sounds amazing. And one of the things that was nice about watching it with Kyle, and he said he's a self-admitted not as much of a cinephile as us, where he wants to learn more, but he's not weird like we are.
Yeah.
Um, but just watching it with someone with such fresh eyes, and the entire time he was just naming movies that he clearly this inspired. Like a scene would happen and he'd be like, "Oh, this was in this," or like a music cue. "Oh, this is from this. This is a." I don't have a list in front of me, but I would be hard pressed for any movie at least the American movie of the '60s, maybe like Bonnie and Clyde or The Graduate or something. But even so, I don't know if any movies had as like greater a reach in terms of just influencing filmmakers and cinematographers and just from top to bottom acting. How many people talk about Peter O'Toole's performance in this movie? Is like, oh my god, it's one of the great. It's got me into acting. David Lean's work, and we're in an era where people do these tiny little shit ass independent movies for $20,000. This is a guy who was making Noel Coward plays into movies and Charles Dickens books into. He was making tiny little black and white fucking things, and then he gets the equivalent of a Marvel movie budget to make a movie about the guy who ruined the world. You know, but he
we'll get
acquits
into
himself.
why he gets that.
And he acquits himself so well to it. So this is one of those movies we get to every now and then on the show where you just like, why is it in the registry? And you just go, why the fuck wouldn't it be? Come on.
My relationship with this film, I'll have to get into a little bit of an anecdote with that, but so when I was a little kid, my favorite movie, like as a little boy, was Aladdin. I loved Aladdin. I think that movie wormed its way into my brain very quickly because I just had this from a very young age. I was drawn to this idea of the romantic desert, right, and all of that, and these stories. I became aware of Lawrence of Arabia through, as Tom was suggesting, like the AFI lists, the A&E things. But I didn't actually watch it for a little while because my parents told me it was boring. And I just
tracks.
in my mind, I was just like, oh, this is one of those kind of like, because I was 10 years old, whatever. I was like, oh, this is one of those homework movies, right? I had seen maybe an image here or there. And the reason I bring up Aladdin is like, again, that was I thought like as a kid that was like, oh, this is the best this is ever gonna feel. And then years and little did I know that was the simply the methadone to the heroin that was Lawrence of Arabia to come. The reason I ended up finally watching it the first time, I'm not going to name the teacher because they might get scolded. Well, they're probably retired by now. So I was in high school, freshman year of high school, when I first read the Quran because I got very interested in the culture of the Middle East and kind of that entire era of history. Again, that 1992 romance of the desert embedded itself very much in my brain. Now, important reminder for everybody, not 2004, 2005, not a great time to be carrying around a copy of the Quran in deeply conservative Long Island high school.
Why? What happened?
It got you some bad reception, but there was one teacher in the school who saw me, and for folks who don't know what I look like, pale blonde hair, blue eyes, and I was very scrawny back then, and just called me Lawrence of Arabia, like but said it in like a to be a dick, right? To be like a dismissive dick. And then I was like, okay, if he's saying that, I might as well check this thing out. So I went down to Blockbuster, rented the DVD, which now feels like heresy to think about watching it on DVD, but I did. one of those where you had to like switch the disc halfway through. And it was, as I joked earlier, like for the kid that loved Aladdin growing up, this thing was just like right back into my veins, so much so that it was one of the only times that, despite being a 4-hour film, one of the only times that I rented a movie, watched it, and then watched it again before I returned it. So I had been aware of once, but I watched it for the first time when I was about 14, 15, and suddenly, like, all of the times that I had heard people, I had seen Spielberg and documentaries talk about it, or like Tom saying, seeing those movies that had been influenced by it, like suddenly it was just all the pieces came together, and like very quickly I kind of just around that same time I kind of just went like, all right, The Graduate, Lawrence of Arabia, these two movies are just kind of going to inform my taste in cinema for the next 20 years. And it hasn't really been shaken yet. But yeah, as Tom indicated too, I'm also of the opinion this is one of the, not just one of the great movies, it's one of the movies. It's certainly one that we both talk about a lot, and contains my favorite scene in any film ever made. If that's a bit of a,
Also, gotta say, you were worried about telling that story. Oh, maybe the teacher gets scolded. Not the worst story that starts with, and so the teacher saw me in the hallway.
Well, yeah. The teacher saw me in the hallway, coughed into their rag a bunch
Especially
of
on
times.
Long
Not
Island.
really clear on.
I was thinking that's what I was just thinking.
Anyway, so before we say any more about what we think of Lawrence of Arabia, let's talk about what the Library of Congress had to say. Here's what the National Film Registry says about Lawrence of Arabia. Based on the exploits of T.E. Lawrence during World War I, this renowned classic may play fast and loose with history and psychology, but its remarkable beauty is breathtaking. David Lean crafts this film, one of his many epics, with sweeping wide shots that capture the desolation of the desert. Peter O'Toole, who was nominated for an Oscar but lost to Gregory Peck for To Kill a Mockingbird, plays Lawrence larger than life, albeit with marginal historical accuracy. Also starring Omar Sharif, Anthony Quinn, and Alec Guinness, the film took home a total of 7 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Cinematography, Freddie Young, and one for Maurice Jarre's memorably rousing score. That's what the National Film Registry had to say. Also, at the end of every episode, I asked Tom how he thinks the movie did at the Oscars, so now we get to play a fun game. Will Tom remember what I just read in roughly an hour?
No.
I was going to say, considering this was prefaced by you saying, I don't listen when you talk, safe to bet. It's this, nice around. But that's what the Library of Congress had to say. Now, they really lean heavy on the idea of this movie isn't historically accurate, which is both true and also kind of tough to pin down, because who's telling the history with this time period is very tricky. For example, something like the Siege of Aqaba. Lawrence will tell you, like in Seven Pillars of Wisdom, his book that is, ostensibly what this is kind of based on, he'll tell you he was involved in, pushing for the Siege of Aqaba. Prince Faisal maintained Lawrence had nothing to do with the plan. It wasn't Lawrence's idea at all. Then there's also stuff that we didn't find out until much later. For example, it's distinctly possible that the British government was like trying to prep T.E. Lawrence to be a spy well before he knew what was going on. There's a fact that when T.E. Lawrence was a young man, he was a student studying like the Crusades and medieval architecture, and this guy named Hogarth came along to him and was like, "Hey, young academic, what if we paid for you to go do a walking tour of the Middle East and what would be like modern day Iran and stuff?" And he was like, "Thanks, Mr. Hogarth. That's really swell. That's going to help my studies." And they were like, yeah. Don't ask about where the money's coming from. And it turns out Hogarth was in what must have been like an earlier version of MI6. And then years later, this same Hogarth guy is running the Arab Bureau during the war. And he's the one that's like, get that boy out of the map room. I got a feeling about him.
Hey, it's Claude Rains.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. So
no, that's just straight up a John Le Carre novel.
Yeah, that's stuff we find out.
That's the Little Drummer
later.
Girl. that's literally what happens in the Little Drummer Girl.
But it's But it is so. I say that as in like they are emphasizing it's not historically accurate, and I think it's certainly not. I mean, one point people bring up, Lawrence was actually very short. Peter O'Toole quite tall. Little things like that. The Omar Sharif character is not a person who existed historically. Anthony Quinn is. Anthony Quinn playing. I want to make sure I get his name right, and I'm going to mispronounce it anyway because I'm terrible. But Anthony
You
Quinn's
are.
Anthony Quinn is playing a real person, and
Ouda
obviously
Abu Tai.
yes, Auda Abu Tai. Lawrence writes about him in the book. Obviously Alec Guinness is playing a real guy, Prince Faisal. Which
Best
is
Middle Eastern actor to ever live.
Yeah. Well, that's one of those funny anecdotes though, because like obviously it's Alec Guinness in brownface, a thing we would not do today. One would hope anyway. But the fascinating thing is, the one story you hear a lot is when Alec Guinness came out from makeup and was on the set, people from the Arab region who knew the real Prince Faisal and like knew him from pictures or had maybe seen him once kept going like it's like he's here. Like his movements, his look. So it was one of those strange things where like at the time, and even Anthony Quinn, there's the anecdote that they had cast Anthony Quinn because they needed a star, right? The studio insisted like you need a star because nobody else was that big a star, Yeah. Peter O'Toole, the studio didn't want him because he wasn't a name. They wanted like Marlon Brando.
Yeah.
Would have been a terrible movie.
Nightmare.
Yeah. But Anthony
Flop sweat.
Quinn, they cast Anthony Quinn. Anthony Quinn gets put into makeup to with the prosthetics, everything to look like out. And when he came onto set, reportedly, David Lean saw a guy he didn't recognize, went, "Well, that looks like the bloody guy. Can we get rid of Quinn?" So, yeah. I just want to talk about the history because I did, I've been at Lawrence. I've been intrigued by Lawrence for a long time. So I did do a lot of like research into the history. I did read this large tome that is his 7 Pillars of Wisdom. I'm in fact such a fan. I showed this to Kyle before we started. You might find this interesting. You might not. But a friend of mine was actually in Jordan and took a tour of the path that Lawrence traveled and was kind enough to bring me back. I actually do own sand from the desert wherein Lawrence did his famous journey. And it is fascinating to look at because when you read Lawrence's book, and they even acknowledge it in the film, like the idea of like, the blood in the sand. You do look at this. This is a very dark red sand. You can kind of see how even in Lawrence's telling of these bloody battles, it does become easy for him to romanticize as a writer. And so I think that romance makes it very hard to determine what is actual historical fact amidst all of it.
I think I have some sand from Iraq still in the basement downstairs in the bag somewhere to hide my shame.
You
That's right.
don't.
I got a cardboard box of stuff in my closet to hide my shame. Don't worry about it. It's fine. It's
But
white.
Yeah, it was in any event, I just wanted to make sure I preface that with the idea of like we can't get too into the historicity because it's such a hard thing to.
Well, it's interesting because you do look up you do any sort of like basic research. I didn't read the book like Mike, but I did a little bit of research going whatever. And it's not, this movie's pretty much not historically accurate on like almost any level other than the fact that T. Lawrence is a man that existed. World War I happened. That's kind of like it, because that you like read it's like, well, this battle didn't actually happen at this point, it happened later. This guy probably wasn't even there for it. Like all the sort of like the details of World War I are kind of like they're just kind of picking and choosing when they happen, whatnot. That Lawrence may or may not have known about the agreement at the end, all of this stuff, which I think is almost kind of to the point of what they were doing with this movie, that we're never going to know the truth. Lawrence seems like he was maybe a bit of a bullshitter who believed his own hype. So let's kind of lean into that. Let's just make a movie about hubris and what war can do to a mind, and not in a I don't even know if it's like not in a tragic way or a tragic way, but like this is the kind of guy who's primed to, if he's given the opportunity during war, to become a power hungry maniac. You know, it's so it's cutting through. It's what's the quote? It's movies aren't, we're not looking for the facts, we're looking for the truth.
Yeah.
And this movie finds the truth at the heart of the story, which is, you know, this guy was kind of primed to be turned into this figure. Like
Well,
no one else could have been this figure in this war. Only him. And
yet, I mean, one of the things I think is interesting about the way Lean chooses to depict him, you read historians who will talk, attribute Lawrence and say like, well, he basically invented guerrilla warfare, or well, his education was such that he understood XYZ. David Lean has no interest in that. And ultimately, the only reason that he doesn't show Lawrence as a particularly great strategist either. Lawrence's greatest skill, the reason he is able to reach Prince Faisal when no one else in the British government can, is he has this incredible skill called thinking the Arabs are people. No, truly, I mean,
no,
he
yeah.
set up things like him, being willing to burn himself on the matches. The trick is not minding that it hurts, all of that. But, Lawrence spoke Arabic. And in fact, many of the men and women serving in the map rooms during that time, during World War I for the British, did speak Arabic. But they go out of their way, I think, in one of my favorite scenes. There's, the other British general basically trying to tell Faisal, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't have discipline. You don't have XYZ. You don't have any of these things. And Sharif doesn't trust him. Nobody trusts him. And meanwhile, there's Faisal's, I'm guessing imam, whatever you want to call him, who is there quoting the Quran, right? Which, by the way, there was a great anecdote in the behind the scenes about the fact that actor who had to read those or speak those memorized portions of the Quran, all of the on-set advisors were basically putting a lot of pressure on him because you can't misquote the Quran, right? Like you can't change a word. So he had to memorize this more than anybody has ever memorized lines fucking ever. And apparently O'Toole and Sharif had gotten so used to the way that this guy had come up with like a patter for the way to deliver the lines, like, and the sun shall not set, that they just kept cracking up during takes. And this poor bastard would have to do it again and again and again. But I love that scene because all it takes for Faisal to look at Lawrence differently is the fact that Lawrence knows the Quran. And then later when Faisal goes, what do you think? Well, I think that your book is right. The ocean, the desert is an ocean and all that. Like, all it really took in some ways to make inroads with Prince Faisal was to essentially have one British person go, maybe we don't know everything. Maybe we should understand the people we're trying to work with. And I love that Lean focuses on that, and he doesn't give us scenes like, for example, yes, Lawrence says, oh, we should approach by land instead of by sea because they're used to the British president. But he doesn't give us a scene that like a more traditional biopic would do, which is like Lawrence comes up with the brilliant idea of let's blow up the Turks train tracks. No, he really is just trying to emphasize like, truly Lawrence's greatest gift was an admiration for the people he was trying to help and sincerely wanting to help them. That was the secret weapon.
Yeah, I want to kind of build off on that. Like, well, this the way the movie characterizes Lawrence is Tommy mentioned, like it's leading into that myth making, and it's just so fascinating. That even I can't only imagine how it felt back then. But well, it's funny. I didn't know it was the same year as Gregory Peck in Kill Mockingbird. Wow, jeez, such a competition. But also like that right there, like Gregory Peck in Kill Mockingbird, he's like the iconic figure of positive masculine man. He's strong, but wise and kind, but he can he has what he has to do. Lawrence, or the way Peter O'Toole plays him, he's so foppish and weird.
Yeah.
He's a fucking freak. But like that's it. And like they don't shy away from that. Like all the other the general, all the other officers, all the other the tribesmen, they always comment. He's just like, this is a weird fucking dude. That's part of like, again, that's part of maybe again becoming the power he has. Like he can be weird like this, and like just to being so almost off-putting to some degree, kind of gives him that weird like mystique in a way. And again, like, is it because he was really like that, or is the movie kind of embellishing that? It doesn't really matter. Like, just like characters, icons throughout history have this certain mystique about them. They are weird people. Like that's what makes them interesting and unique. So yeah, just really interesting. Like I said, I don't know how it was back then, but like you see in modernized, it's like this guy's a fucking weirdo. It was great.
Well, I mean, when he starts dancing in his new, Arabic robes,
Yeah.
and then Anthony Quinn just stumbles upon him and looks at him like, "What the fuck are you
What you
doing?"
doing?
Which, by the way, they improvised that on set. He basically said, "Okay, so we have." He apparently David Lean came to Peter O'Toole and went, "Petey," because it's David Lean. "Petey, there's a hole in the script." "What do you mean?" "They give you the robes, and then later you have this scene. There's a hole in the script. What do you want to do? What should Lawrence do? What would a young man do with these robes?" And so O'Toole was like, "I think I have an idea." Lean took him out into the desert, found that flat of land where O'Toole does his twirl and all, set up 3 cameras, and said, "Here's your stage." So O'Toole twirls, and then, on a whim, O'Toole made this up. He was like, "Oh, I would want to look at myself. I have this blade. I'll use it for the reflection." And he looks at the reflection in the blade for that scene. Again, improvised, right? And then he said, O'Toole's telling the story, and he says once he pulled out the knife and looked at it, he heard David from behind one of the cameras go, "Clever boy." And that caused Lean to come up with, "Okay, later you're going to look at yourself again and the knife is covered in blood." Like, that was where that comes from. I didn't mean to judge him too much, but when you mentioned that scene, I just wanted to make sure I got that anecdote on the record.
Well, it's and to jump off of both of what you guys are saying, showing that his biggest strength in his place in history is that he treated them like people, and that he was kind of this weird guy that was able to disarm everybody to get into this position. I also think it's important to note that this movie makes it very clear a lot of what makes him successful is sheer just shit ass luck.
Yeah. Yeah.
That he literally just, "Oh yeah, I'll find Faisal, I'll find a guy and he'll take me and whatever," and then they just stumble upon Omar Sharif, who kills his guide, and then he's just like, "Hey asshole, you killed my friend." Sharif could have just straight up killed his ass. Lucky.
Yeah.
Going through to Aqaba and having to go back for the guy who falls off the camel. That's luck. There's no strategy there. It's just like, "Oh, I'll just go back with whence we came." No, he could be anywhere, you dumb shit. They were telling you going in a straight line might kill you. Going back, then going forward again? What are you even doing? Because then you get into the second half in the intermission where it's just like he's bombing the trains, and they keep telling him, like, "Well, every time you do this, you're losing men. What's your plan?" "Oh, they'll come back." That's not a plan. You're going to run out of guys soon enough. And then, lo and behold, he does. And then he just, cocky man that he is, strolling through the streets with fucking Omar Sharif. And they're like, "Oh no, they won't notice me if I'm in my Arabian robes." And they're like, immediately like, no, you're not Arabian. Come with us. Excuse me. Come with us right now. And it's just sheer luck that he was able to become the icon and even survive any of this.
Yeah.
But that's a key question, Tom, that I think the film asks. Because you say luck. And I think what the film wants us to question is it luck or is it fate? Because there is a running theme where they have that conversation about it is written, right? Allah has written it all, and Lawrence says nothing is written, right? And at first, Sharif buys that as an inspiration, kind of like Lawrence, truly for some nothing is written. But then later, you can't go back, it is written, nothing is written. Some things are, and Lawrence is already going back on that, but it works, right? And I think that the idea of fate versus luck, Lawrence tries to tell the Arabs nothing is written, right? And yet, Lawrence consistently acts with the confidence of someone like Tom, like you were saying, like, "Well, I'll find Faisal and all stuff." Lawrence always acts with the confidence of it is written, right? He acts with that confidence. And I think that one of the fascinating things about Lawrence as a character is he was able to help win this front. There's no arguing that. But, how much of it, as I said, how much of it was fate, how much of it was luck, and also how much of it was contrived. Because you have the photographer show up who is, in the movie, he's saying, I want to convince the Americans to join the war. In fact, we were already in the war at that point, and he was like, well, I want to raise the spirits. And one thing I found fascinating reading the introduction to this version of Seven Pillars of Wisdom is they talked about part of why T.E. Lawrence was such a celebrity. We don't talk about the Eastern Front during World War I that often. The reason why it was such a triumph, when Seven Pillars of Wisdom came out in the UK, it was the second highest selling book after the Bible. It was a big hit. Part of the reason he became such a celebrity, which I hadn't even considered, is World War I is a terrible war. Britain has nothing to be proud of on the Western Front. They're just like, more men are dead. More men are dead. Everything's bad. Everything's terrible. We needed heroes from World War I. And suddenly, you have this white guy in the desert who is helping the Arabs, who is uniting the Arabs against the Turks. This white guy in the desert who is going to ostensibly bring down the Ottoman Empire, which we have to consider, the Ottoman Empire was this kind of this thing that existed as like a stalemate for the rest of the empires throughout the world. Like, as long as the Ottoman Empire stood, from the English standpoint, they're like, look, we don't want the Ottoman Empire around because we'd love to have that land. But as long as the Ottoman Empire is around, at least the French and the Russians can't get it.
Yeah.
And France and Russia, they're thinking the same things. So the idea that a British man could lead the Arabs to take out the Ottoman Empire, then it's like, well, surely he'll win all this cheddar for us. I say all that because there is this idea of Lawrence. Vice, you mentioned, well, he was so foppish. He was so not the typical masculine image. There is an element to Lawrence, which is the idea of you almost feel like the British propaganda arm was sitting back and going, God, I really wish that we had a more traditional war hero to hold up, but this weird, pale, foppish masochist is all we got. So if he wants to write a book that talks about, his experiences in the war and his repulsion to the idea of sex and all of that, like, if he wants, listen, it's the only book we're getting that's not going to be somebody saying they left us all to die in the trenches. So,
well, to be fair, what's more British than a repressed guy who likes to kill minorities?
But the beginning of the movie, I thought, makes it. The beginning of the movie is so brilliant because it does kind of make the point that the people who knew Lawrence the least have the most respect for him.
Yeah.
That there's, you go to that funeral and because honestly, truthfully, the first time I saw the movie, I did not even pick up on I just was kind of, it's a long movie, you miss some things. I didn't even pick up on the fact that the guy at the beginning who gets so offended when he's like, sir, I
shook his hand once.
Yeah, I shook his hand. Is the one that, his only real interaction with Lawrence, besides shaking his hand, is yelling unacceptable, at him when he's at the hospital because, he doesn't notice this. So I just think that,
I was just thinking about this discussion about how the movie's getting, is discussing the is it destiny, is it not destiny thing. And I definitely think the movie's having that conversation and the characters are having their arcs of believing and whatnot. But I think what the movie's doing, because it has the benefit of hindsight, and now even us, 60 years removed from the movie, even more hindsight, I think the movie's very much ends on there is no destiny. It was all sheer luck, because why would destiny put this guy who does clearly have such a respect and admiration for this people, put him in such a position that the Middle East is going to become a hellhole for the next 100 years of people that don't live there fighting over it and saying, well, no, it should be ours. No, it should be ours. But there's oil. But there's this.
Well,
I think it's very interesting. You know, in the 60s, you know, it may not have been as bad as it was, as it's, you know, 60 years later, but the movie is kind of clearly ending on the point of the Middle East is going to get a little rocked now because England kind of tricked this guy into doing their dirty work and priming them up for this accord that's going to chop up the land for these whiteys that don't even really fucking know anything about these people.
but
So
I
I
would-
think I don't think what you're saying is wrong,
Mhm.
because I think Sharif and O'Toole's characters definitely have that sort of fluctuation within the movie itself. I just think in the grand scheme of the movie, the omniscient David Lean of the movie wants the audience to end on that
Well,
there was no destiny. Because
I-
destiny would not have allowed this guy to kind of ruin this land in such a way.
I would counter, though, that there's two elements to that. One, I think the reason, when you're talking about, like, well, Destiny wouldn't allow, I mean, part of the issue that Lawrence has, and it's brought up early on in the film, he has an admiration for the Arab culture, right? And we say Arab because that was the term at the time. I'll read a portion of the book that gets into that, but he has an admiration for the people and the culture in the abstract, right? The same way that, like, to put it in a modern context, I mean, how many people do we know that will go see all of, you know, how many film critics do we know that go see all of the quote unquote important black films and talk about how much they really appreciate the black culture and that they put the little black squares on their Instagram page and also have been the most privately racist motherfuckers on the face
Oh,
of the earth,
privately.
right? So, but think about Lawrence, you know, early on in the film, and it's a very blunt examination of this in the film too. Lawrence, despite having all this admiration, right? After, you know, he turns to Sharif and he goes, you know, the behavior like this, the Arab people will always be a silly people, a little people, greedy, barbarous, cruel. And then later, that comes up twice more. Faisal, when he's talking to him to tell him, I got ears everywhere, goes, well, you know, to you, the Arab people, we're a silly people, greedy, barbarous, cruel, you know. And Lawrence's response is like, well, you don't have to be, which is telling because Lawrence seems to think he has an admiration for the Arab people, but he also thinks he's above them. He also thinks, I can civilize them, I can westernize them. I can now. This is going to be a confusing sentiment. I know for you, Vice. Stick with me here, because you obviously talked about the conflict you served in, and this isn't related at all. Lawrence, this white guy, who only knows Arab culture from books, seems to think that he can bring democracy and Western ideals to the Middle East. Stick with me. Stick with me. It's a quagmire because a bunch of white Westerners decide I'm going to bring democracy to the Middle East and I will be greeted as a liberator. Stick with me here.
But even just like his even in his day-to-day dealings, as it were, as the movie goes on, where he's as he's interacting with the tribes themselves, and then when you see them do their day-to-day business, but that in the context of their tribal society at the time, that day-to-day business included like blood feuds and executions, and like he's like, and so you see him kind of that kind of the reality hits of like, oh, I have this romanticized idea of the Arabic world, as he calls it. But it's like, nah, you know, she gets real, son. You gotta get ready for this. And then to win.
Well, and there's also
Well, no,
that
because
element. Yeah, you were talking about.
I think. We're all just jumping all over each other.
I'm just saying, you know, you talked about that thing with the blood feuds, right?
Yeah.
And that pivotal scene where Lawrence risked his life to save this guy, and then this guy threw his life away to kill some guy from another tribe because of some, you know, Hatfields and McCoy-esque blood feud. And Lawrence is going, well, that's, you know, basically going, that's stupid. This is dumb. I'll kill him if it means it'll end the feud. Because Lawrence thinks he's better than these foolish, you know, primitive Arabs who can't see past their tribes, right? And they're willing to fuck everything up because of their tribalism. And then what happens? He goes back to the British camp in Cairo, the British generals are sitting there, and Claude Rains is there, and he goes, "Well, a fella named Sykes and a fellow named Peacoat came together and decided that the French will have this portion, and we need to let the British have this portion." And it's like, and there's Lawrence having to stand there, and essentially, whether he knows it in the moment or not, he's like, "Oh, right. Our tribes, the British tribe and the French tribe, have a blood feud going all the way back to like the 1200s, and we're dividing up this Middle East land that isn't ours because of a blood feud that we have going back to the fucking Crusades."
Yeah.
Like, he has to accept, that, like...
But see, isn't that also I think also a part of what I'm kind of getting into, which is that, yeah, he looks down on the Arabic people, at, their blood feuds and all that stuff and all that. But we see in the beginning, before he gets sent off, he thinks he's better than everybody.
Yes.
Yeah.
This isn't a guy who thinks, oh well, Brit might is right. It's just straight up, well, no, I'm better than everybody because I'm smart and I'm scholarly and I can put out matches and not feel pain, and I'm this weird little man and whatever. But it's like, no, he thinks he's better than everybody. He thinks he can go. He tells, in that before the intermission, he says, "Don't send me back. It's going to make me crazy." But then he accepts because in his egotistical mind, he thinks, I can make an impact in this land. These guys, they're going to let me do the right thing, and we're going to do the right thing for the Arabic people. And then as he leaves, we watch as Claude Rains and the general just like, well, no, fucking this idiot's just going to do what we want, and we're going to cut everything up, and everything's going to be fine. He doesn't know. He's so myopic in his own egotism and narcissism that he doesn't realize he's not better than anybody. And that what I was trying to get at with the destiny thing is more so like the movie ends it tragically of just, we fucked this place up.
Mhm.
And I don't think the movie is trying to make the point it was destiny for this place to get ruined, because of how clearly anti-colonial the movie is and how clearly anti-colonial David Lean is within making this movie. I think it would just be a weird way to end your movie going, oh, well, they're making the argument that it was destiny for England to take over this place.
Can I offer one other counter to that, which is the other element that's going on in this film to me, that I think is present, and it's not doing it too much. Look, you can never actually make a film about the origins of Islam, right? You have that little hurdle that Mustafa Akkad had to kind of get over, which is, I want to make a movie about the founding of Islam. I also can't on screen depict any of the major figures of the founding of Islam. He ends up making The Message and actually casts Anthony Quinn in it. It's a cool movie. Check it out. But anyway, there are elements in the same way that like Dune is partly drawing from the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and also elements of that. Lawrence is also building on that, because I think, Tom, when I'm talking about destiny, I don't think the film is saying it is destiny. I think it's playing with the concept of destiny, because when you consider the fact that if you are modeling this and the story of Lawrence is essentially a prophet, right? Instead of getting messages from God, he's coming going, I have all these things from the British government. I have all this military strategy. I have this whatever. And I'm coming here and I'm going to have the people worshiping me, right? And similarly, like, consider that if you're contending with the origins of Islam, which is this military, force that united the Arab world, got all of these people speaking Arabic, had a message that was saying, hey, get over all of a lot of your tribal superstitions, stop burying girl babies in the desert, things like that. Solid, but seriously, like solid, that kind of thing. But then ultimately, like what you have in that story, you have the story of a prophet with the word of God coming down and saying, I did it. I have united the people. I have done all of this. And then ultimately, just like that scene with the Arab Congress, similarly, like you have a story where essentially this man, this extraordinary figure, this extraordinary prophet came in, united all of these people, had these military victories. That's it. Destiny. It all came together. Dies. And then immediately people go, who should take over? I don't know. Should it be like a guy related to him? Should it be this general that was there? I don't know, but we're probably going to fight about this ever since like 600 something AD to now. That even then, like the actual story there. So I think that I'm not suggesting that the movie is saying that that destiny would allow Lawrence so much that like there is that real world parallel of like even the most significant real world story of the Middle East of like, hey, we did it, we've got a religion, we've got a mandate from God. It still comes apart because of like factionalism and petty squabbles. So that's kind of what I'm
Well,
saying in terms of the destiny parallels there.
no, I listen. That's why I'm saying I think both
Mhm.
things are happening, and I think almost as a counter to what you're saying, I don't think I think the Muhammad Islam stuff you were just saying is accurate. I also think there's a bit of a Christianity thing
Oh,
going
for
on
sure.
through this
Yeah.
movie.
They make it explicit, and well, because like yeah, like some of the lines, it's like you're not. He's gonna cross Sinai like Moses, and the guy, and then his friend says, "I'm not. You're not Moses." He's like, yeah, I'm a prophet or whatever. Like he's
Yeah, Moses was a prophet.
yeah, like he's saying, and like this kind of this, it's almost like a reference. It's a reference for us or the Western audience too to like kind of see where he's coming from. Like Lawrence having that background of the Quran would probably saying shit like that. So for us as an audience, like we can see again, like he's using biblical references upon himself, and yeah, and like that's part of it. Those movies like him buying his own bullshit, and it kind of fluctuates throughout the movie. Like in the beginning, he's a hot shit. And then there's a certain parts where he says after a really trouble incident, he says, "I'm just an ordinary man. I want to have an ordinary job." He says this,
Yeah.
and immediately, almost immediately after saying that, he's like, "I'm going back to the fight." Like he waffles himself because again, that ego is just too strong. And so like, and so he's building his own myth, building his own like aura. Maybe because he has to in a way too, like not just because the ego is so strong,
Yeah.
but like he has to believe in something. So he's like, I'm gonna keep believing in this thing, even though things get progressively worse for not just himself, but of course people around him that he's trying to help essentially. It's also, well, like this is just a side note, but like we're talking like uh, biblical text or religious text, like even the story of Jesus is the same way. As far as the four different gospel writers have wildly different interpretations of what Jesus is,
Yeah.
and the point being, like I forget, I think it was the John's gospel where it kind of directly crib off the. Well, there's only one gospel of the four that have the whole story about the king Jesus, a baby trying to escape the king,
Yeah.
and that's purposely was written that way to like kind of basically have the Jewish readers buy into quote unquote
To fit prophecy. Yeah.
yeah that Jesus is the actual Messiah. But that's just one.
Yeah.
That's just one of the four interpretations. See, like that the whole myth thing, like you have to buy, believe it yourself, believe your own bullshit to make it work. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
You see it playing out. It's this kind of remind me of the the Ten Commandments film actually in a way. But yeah, again, just like the scope and scale again. It's a long ass fucking movie too.
It's also just like it feels very pointed to at what would kind of be the picturesque version of Christ at the time in the 60s, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, pretty boy.
White robe, yeah,
Strolls
Yeah.
White robe, strolls into the desert in the Middle East, starts telling everybody he knows how things need to be,
yeah.
and, the second he's gone from the Middle East, everything turns to shit, and the white people take over. Um, I mean, shit, like, he has his trek through the desert,
Yeah.
which also kinda doubles as his death and resurrection, which helps build up his myth amongst all of the
Yeah,
tribes.
yeah,
It's almost like an atheistic version of it's like an atheist story of, like, people buying into this religious idea, and there is no destiny. This guy was just in the right place at the right time, and he fucked everything up for you. You guys don't realize it because he thought he was doing the right thing, but he was a myopic idiot, and he fucked everything up for you guys trying to do the right thing.
yeah.
There was no, like, he's not the prophet. He's not this guy who's here to bring you guys into a new sense of unity. He's just an egotistical weirdo who got played by the British government,
Yeah.
and he was the useful idiot that the British government needed, at the right time.
I
And
wanna
but I think all of this is just like I just think like this whole discussion is part of why the fucking movie's great because
yeah.
it doesn't other than saying it sucks that the British Empire and the French took over the Middle East, it really doesn't give you easy answers of like, well, what's it trying to say about Lawrence? Is he this guy? Is he that guy? Is it this? Is it that? It's just like for again, like for the myth, what you talking about myths, the myth of Hollywood and how we didn't get deep, complicated, complex anti-hero like, don't hold your hand movies until the 70s. And you got this fucking thing, this 4-hour fucking movie about World War One, just comes in and it's just like, nah, bro, you
I
ain't gonna
wanna
know what way is up and what way is down in this movie.
I want to go back to something Vice brought up, which is specifically, the scene where Lawrence quotes the Quran, because I was thinking about that. So there are two surahs quoted in the film. The guy reading them. One I believe is 73, but the other one, the one that Lawrence actually finishes, right? The guy speaks it, then Faisal speaks it, then Lawrence speaks it. Is Surah 93, and I found that really interesting because it would be easy to just say he's picking random. You could pick random surahs. There's a bunch of them. But they picked one on purpose because if you know it, it's a little bit about Lawrence. Now, obviously, the actual surah is as all of them are is God speaking to the prophet, right? And the prophet, was an orphan and he's speaking to him. But so the lines we get in the movie are, "I swear by the early hours of the day and the night when it covers with darkness, your Lord has not forsaken you, nor has he become displeased." Mind you, I'm reading from my own, like a copy that I have, which is a different translation than the movie, so I might not be verbatim the film, but "I swear by the early hours of the day and the night when it covers with darkness, your Lord has not forsaken you, nor has he become displeased. And surely what comes after is better for you than what has gone before. And soon will your Lord give you so that you shall be pleased." Those are the lines. That last line is what Lawrence finishes. Here's what I find interesting is that the rest of the surah goes on. "Did he not find you an orphan and give you shelter?" Now, remember, Lawrence addresses the fact he wasn't an orphan, but he was a bastard, right? He was born out of wedlock, and that hangs over him. "Did he not find you as an orphan and give you shelter, and find you lost, unrecognized by men, and guide them to you, and find you in want, and make you to be free from want? Therefore, as for the orphan, do not oppress him. As for him who asks, do not chide him. And as for the favor of your Lord, do announce it." I think that is a fascinating choice to pull because, again, you only get the first half in the film, but the remainder of that surah is, in as much as it's spoken to the prophet, it's describing Lawrence and saying to him, both addressing like perhaps why Lawrence feels so drawn to the Arab people because he feels like an outcast in his own life,
Yeah.
right? As a bastard, and as somebody, let's face it, of Irish descent
Right.
in the British Empire. But also, the message of that surah is going, hey, you were an orphan and Allah took care of you. So take care of these orphans. Like, basically treat these people as you'd want to be treated. And that's a message that Lawrence doesn't actually get.
Hmm.
Is that he's leading these people, but he doesn't actually put himself in their place, right? He doesn't. He can be petty and he can feel these emotions, but when they feel those emotions, he's quick to condemn them as greedy, barbarous, cruel. Like, he fails to put himself in that place. And that surah is so particularly basically going like, look, I may be giving you these messages, but don't go thinking that puts you above these other people.
Yeah.
You were an orphan once. Do not think you're better than the orphans now. And Lawrence's issue was he came into the desert an orphan. He came into the desert as somebody that the British basically went, that guy drawing maps is weird. Send him away. We do not think he'll be able to do anything. Just because you came back and you did things, do not forget that you were an orphan and don't forget about the orphans. I think that's just a fascinating choice. Again, they could have pulled any quotes. They could have pulled a quote just because they thought it sounded nice.
Yeah.
But they did have a bit of foreshadowing there that is really kind of only there if you know the Quran, which is kind of like, I don't know, if you're Norwegian and watching The Thing, And when in Norwegian, like, yo, that dog's an alien. Like the Norse people in the audience are like, oh, good, I know where this is going now, and everybody else is going, what? I just wanted to make sure I acknowledged that because I think that's such a great little thing that Lean includes. I think is
Uh,
interesting.
a bit that I think is very important at getting at, kind of almost jumping at what you're saying, but also like getting at the core of Lawrence as a character, is towards the end when they do one of their raids on the train, and Anthony Quinn gets all of this. He gets all his loot,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the British, not a general, major or whatever, the one guy was in who was in with Faisal at the beginning, he's there again, and he's telling Anthony Quinn, "Oh, it's wrong that all these men are looting. They're thieves." And he goes, "No, that's what war is. We do this, we take some shit, and we go home." Like, well, I would never go home. I'm not a cow. No, you're gonna go home when you get what you want.
Mm-hmm.
I got what I want. I'm going home, and that's kind of the important thing, which this movie very clearly does not tell you. Lawrence doesn't know what he wants.
Mm-hmm.
He's not here for any particular goal. He's just here to feel like a god. He is just here for the power and the messianic qualities that all of these people are bestowing upon him. He loves what they're doing to him.
Yeah.
Like, he's not there for, I'm gonna free them. I'm gonna free the. It's like, oh, we're gonna blow up trains. Well, you keep losing people when you blow up a train. It's like you're having it each time. Don't worry, we'll figure it out. So what actually are you doing, my man?
Yeah.
It's really just he's just high on his own supply.
Yeah.
That's really, and I think that's kind of like a very key moment in like this whole just just 4 hour
Yeah. So actually,
mashup.
let's talk about the actual war movie part of the movie for a minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Those two raids, and then probably one of the major scenes thematically is when you see him the bloodlust that eventually takes
That
over him.
is
It's a
my
very
favorite
very
scene in any
critical
film.
important
Yes.
scene. So yeah, but like and then again actually one of the quotes from earlier that they talk about were he's they describe the Arabic people as savage brutes, and then to go to context of the film, the Turkish soldiers on their way for fleeing an area, they ransack a village, rape, murder, pillage,
Mm-hmm.
and so the Lawrence and his army find this, and so they go to basically extract revenge upon them, but really just view the satiate the bloodlust, and so Lawrence, once the battle ensues, he gets caught up, and it's they frame it really well. They frame it like he's not a furor or in a fury. He's in a panic. He can't even control what he's doing. He's just like he waving his pistol around, and like he's so caught up in the chaos of war that he on his he kind of thinks or he intuits that, oh, I should go kill, but he can't even comprehend how to do it properly. Like a true warrior uh understands that. Well, we had different words for it. The scale. But proportional force. Well, force proportion. Like because he didn't understand. He's kind of waving around wildly. And so then once the battle's finally over and you see him again, he's covered in blood and shaking and crying, like not a heroic I picture at all. He looks like a fucking just like a piece of shit that's animal that's had to just fight or kill another animals, or in his mind. Yeah, and Sharif looks, he's after the fact, after the battle, they kind of like, who are you to tell me about bloodshed? But also they say, oh, look at who else but Arabs could do this? I wonder, be barbarous and savage and cruel, and and greedy. Who else? I wonder. Nope, only us Arabs. And this whole campaign of blood and fire was mainly, for the most part, Lawrence is doing. So like again, that really incites a criticism where they say it without saying it, but like it's so clear that yeah, like no, who's this? Who's the actual savage here? And it's like no, and I guess in reality it's all of us, but like that's also the point. She was like this: the savagery is not the domain of one single othered people. It's
So that when I alluded to my favorite scene in any movie ever, as I'm sure Tom knew, he's known me long enough to know this is what I meant. This is the scene.
Yeah.
That performance that Peter O'Toole gives before he even yells "No prisoners," that face acting is incredible. One of the reasons I love it so much is the movie has been creating this dynamic where, in a way, there's kind of the cartoon angel and devil on his shoulder, which is Omar, on the one hand, Omar Sharif, who represents Lawrence has actually been turning him intellectually, right? He's been winning over Sharif on the idea of like, you can be better, right? I can, air quotes, civilize you, right? Like you can come to England and study and all of that. And he's winning him over. And then the sort of devil on his shoulder, the kind of spirit of the desert, is Anthony Quinn's character, right? The one who's going to take his gold when he gets it. And that's why Quinn at the end is like, well, Lawrence, you live for the desert. Like that's what it is. What I think is so great, and why I love that scene so much, is that instead of making the dynamic, the whole movie, that's been the dynamic, right? And you're wondering like who's going to win out. It's the fact that it's a random guy, an actor we've barely seen in the film, whose voice is ADR'd, just going, "No prisoners," right? That it's not a hackier film would basically have like, Omar Sharif going, "Well, let me explain to you why we shouldn't do this," and then Anthony Quinn on the other side going, "Lawrence, there's a good reason to do," but instead, all you get besides O'Toole's incredible face acting is just, Sharif going, "Lawrence, Damascus, no prisoners,
Yeah.
Lawrence, Damascus," and what I love about that, even in that moment, the guy is, again, this is a gruff ADR voice, just going, "No prisoners." This is a voice that is not attached to a person in a way, right? The ultimate voice of like the devil of temptation. And then even with Sharif, he's not just saying that. Sharif's performance is so good in that because when he's saying Damascus, he's not just saying, no, Lawrence, stick to the plan. But the way he delivers Damascus is as though he's saying, that is what this is about, right? Like this, I've been telling myself there's higher ideals to this. I've been telling myself this isn't just about killing. I need to know that this is not just about killing. And then obviously, the guy runs out, gets shot, and it's that moment, it's the way that O'Toole delivers no prisoners, right?
Yeah.
And then we see him maybe twice during that sequence, and they are these haunting images. I can't describe it properly, but Lean just manages to incorporate this shot. We get to see a lot of emotion on Omar Sharif's face. Lawrence, it's this one shot of Peter O'Toole with his mouth agape, grin on his face. It looks like a mask. It looks like one of those like rubber paralyzed masks, or like a wax sculpture where he's just tilted. It looks like the cover of Radiohead's The Bends. He's just and it's haunting and upsetting. And the last thing I'll say on that scene, because I could go for hours, but to take it back to that Islamic ties, like it's fascinating that even then you can draw a parallel to, when you look at the story of the founding of Islam, one of the things that often gets brought up, people might have heard of it, is the massacre or the invasion of the Banu Qurayza. Obviously, if you read the Quran, you're supposed to be under the impression that everything that the Prophet did and everything that's what you should model yourself after, right? And a lot of these battles are valiant battles against, but the massacre of the Banu Qurayza was essentially, the Banu Qurayza were a Jewish tribe. And I'm just going to be going off of a book here. I'm not going to be trying to cast this person. They were a Jewish tribe that were allied with the Muslims in their cause. They loaned them equipment, but they refused to fight in one of the battles because they were offended by some of the attacks. Some say there was a treaty that was torn apart. Others don't. But essentially, the Prophet says he was commanded by God. They have to besiege the Banu Qurayza. The Banu Qurayza surrender. And when they were trying to decide what to do with them, I believe, some people came to him and said we should treat them leniently, and others were like we should be harsh. And he essentially, the Prophet basically turned to a guy named Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, who had been injured by an arrow during the conflict. Goes to him and says, "It's your call. What do you think we should do?" which doesn't, if you're trying to square this text, not turning to, to God and going like, give me a sign, just like, all right, this guy's got an errand. I'm like, what do you think we should do? And the guy says, the men should be killed, the women and the children taken as slaves. And the prophet approves of the ruling, says, well, that's in accordance with God's decree. And they just, I think hundreds of people, the approximation is like 600 to 900 people are killed. And you listen to people who talk about this, and you listen to scholars who basically say, like, this is one of the toughest things to square in our faith, is the idea of, what was this about? Like, this is such a pivotal moment of like, well, it seems like you went to the guy who had the arrow through him, and you said like, this is well, that's not the person to judge. And in the same way, like, I think it's such a one-to-one, because you create this character rather than have it be Anthony Quinn. You create this character whom, well, that was his village, right? And it would be very easy for Lawrence to go, that was his village. He feels wronged by this. Not really the best judge of character on this one. So maybe, but instead Lawrence just, that becomes his excuse to this.
Yeah.
Whether it's desert madness or whether it's actually, God stepping in and going, yes, Lawrence, go massacre these people. Like, it's, it's a great parallel, I think.
All that stuff, dead on accurate. Love that. What I love about it is that it is kind of a conflagration of two gigantic hypocrisies of Lawrence coming together at once, leading to this moment of his bloodshed. Because this is after he gets taken by the Turks and is tortured and is thrown away. So all of this is happening because he got hurt and embarrassed by the Turks, which again goes back to the very first, well, not the very first scene, but before the match cut, him saying, you have to mind that it doesn't hurt, which is clearly bullshit, because if he didn't mind getting hurt, him getting tortured by the Turks wouldn't have been that much of a deal, and then it wouldn't have turned him into such a stark raving madman that when the opportunity arises and all of this madness is going on, for him to start, he's fighting within himself. Clearly he's conflicted about what's going on in his own mind, but then that egotism comes in. They hurt me. How dare they hurt me? I'm supposed to be the guy you don't hurt. I don't mind the pain. Fuck it. Kill them all. This is no longer about, there's no more pretense about this is for the Arabic people. There's no pretense of we're doing this for the right reasons. They hurt me. Fuck them.
And again, like, even when that comes out of him too, like, it's not even framed as a righteous or a like a revenge, it's not trumpet revenge. It's like he's terrified doing, or not even, he's like out of his mind doing it. He can't even like consolidate or grasp in his mind he's doing the revenge, or spiritual. Like, it's just so much. It's just so overwhelming that it's not even. It's almost like not even worth it. Like he just lost himself completely, as opposed to like getting something back by doing revenge. He's completely gone now, and they frame it as such. Like he's just a animal now, feral, like with no all of his intellect. He might as well wipe his ass with his degree. Like that's where all that led him to. Is being in a bloody mess in the sand. That's where it led him.
And again, it's like, again,
himself in the bloody dagger. Yeah.
And again, it's like the hypocrisy of, he looks down on these Arabic people where they have their blood feuds and everything. Oh, they're all these personal things. They're ruining everything. They can't let it go. And it's like, bro, you couldn't fucking let it go. You committed a genocide. You committed a goddamn war crime in the middle of the desert because you got whipped a bit. Like,
as here, I want to. Guess he mentioned it. Well, I don't know if. So here, seeing this is my first time seeing this movie recently. One thing I didn't, and again, I didn't do any specific research about the history of Lawrence himself, other than just what I had learned academically, like I said, cinema. So there's the scene that you mentioned about his capture, which I didn't know about. So I want to just talk about this for a little bit, because like this that definitely informs what follows through, like we just mentioned, the battle. So I didn't know that from most accounts, they historically they seem to be the agreement is that he was tortured and raped by the Turkish army, or specifically a mayor or a provincial mayor in who was captured.
The Jose Ferrer character,
Right.
played by Academy Award nominee Jose Ferrer.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
No, winner. Sorry,
Yeah.
Academy Award winner Jose Ferrer.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, so actually, and the thing is, like, for maybe for obvious reasons, or maybe not so obvious, you don't hear about this scene much. At least, from my context, I didn't
Yeah.
even know the scene was in the movie. But you don't hear about this scene too much, or you don't hear about even when you talk about like the rape revenge genre or whatever. Like
Mhm.
you don't hear of Lawrence of Arabia as one of those films that depicts it because nobody ever says it. It always focuses on the white savior dynamic and how and how it explores that, but never this. And like, this is actually kind of weird that this is part of where it gets like the most real quote unquote war movie because rape was a common weapon in war as well, just as much as
Yeah.
any arms. And so like this and then throughout the beginning of the film, they kind of comment that Lawrence is not fit for the field, and then you
Mhm.
see him kind of prove himself more or less. Doing the long desert trekking stuff, and proving he has like at least the stamina or ability to withstand the harsh desert environment. But then like this is probably between his capture, torture, and apparent sexual assault, and into that leads up, and then and the aftermath when he escapes going into the battle you kind of see that no, this is truly the reality of war. Because part of it is like throughout those initial battles, even though in the rage, he doesn't actually kill anybody with his own hands during
Mhm.
month or the first part of his campaign. It's only after his assault you physically see, at least on film, you see him actually kill other people. So yeah, those were really fascinating. They did that because again, like really Tom's point, like he's not above any of this shit, but also he's not even he's that's part of the myth. Like he survived this stuff, but maybe he wasn't built for it. He just again that dumb luck that he survived this shit. Not
Yeah.
everybody fucking
Well, because like the movie says, like, well, not it doesn't say so much, but they pretty much tell you the only reason those Turks let him go is because they don't know they have Lawrence.
yeah.
They just think, well, you're either on that side or that side, but you're not Arabic, so we got to figure out what the hell to do with you. So we're gonna torture you. Well, we didn't get any information. You're nobody. Just throw him out in the fucking out the door and whatever.
Yeah.
If like if it's again that dumb luck, yeah. If they even got a hint
Yo, yeah.
that
Oh my
this was
god, yeah.
Lawrence, the only reason they captured him was just there's a white guy here. What the fuck
What's
is
he
this?
doing?
This
Yeah.
is like no. Like no, obviously
The-
something's going on. But if it was if it was even a hint of like, oh, we think Lawrence is in the village, we got to be on the lookout for a white guy. It's literally just he just again like I said, straight up dumb luck. Just yeah, and he's
But
not built for this. Yeah,
he's not just white though; he's English. And
yes,
it's important to remember that the reason the Turks are even involved in this conflict, I don't want to get too into World War One is confusing. It just is. But the reason that they end up allying with the Russians is because Churchill essentially there was a whole conflict over ships, and Churchill there was supposed to be ships, then Churchill kept the ships away, and that's why the Turks joined the Russians because they were like, ah, fuck the English. So it's not just that he's white; it's the fact that here's Lawrence, right? Who earlier the guy Gassim, who he came to rescue, he has to shoot Gassim because, well, these stupid tribes and their blood feud. And Lawrence is not just tortured, but he's sexually assaulted. And I think it's worth noting, the reason he's sexually assaulted is it's not just done as an act of gratification; it's done as an act of humiliation,
Yeah.
right? It's not just done for some guy to satisfy an urge. It's done specifically because we're going to this Englishman thinks about we're going to sexually humiliate him. And so this happens because when Lawrence was in the desert and it was the Arabs against the Turks, he was going to help the Arabs, but he didn't have really a dog in this fight, right? In his mind anyway, it's like, well, the British, they're not really interested in the Eastern Front, but to the Turks, they got an English guy. And now Lawrence is caught in the middle of the conflict between the two tribes of his world,
Yeah.
right? The civilized world. He's caught in the conflict between the tribes. So I think it's important to bear in mind. You're right, Tom. They toss him out because they don't know they have Lawrence. Essentially, one of the things Lean is telling us is, we're just the English is a tribe. And I want to
Yeah.
touch on that before we get too much more into the film. One thing we've kind of not addressed yet. We keep talking about, David Lean made these small films, these black and white films, and then he's making Lawrence. It's important to remember the reason he has the budget for Lawrence and the power for all of that is that he makes The Bridge on the River Kwai.
Yes.
A couple years earlier, in the late 50s, he makes The Bridge on the River Kwai, which wins a bunch of Oscars and is a big epic hit. But even Bridge on the River Kwai is essentially David Lean going, being British is a cult.
Mhm.
Like, in a way, he's like,
Yeah.
Bridge on the River Kwai is Alec Guinness now in the lead, basically going like, well, chaps, we're going to build this bridge for them to show them the British work ethic. And only too late does he go, what have I done? Like, what on earth? So you can, it's fascinating, to think about that he makes Bridge on the River Kwai, which is him exploring these themes of like, what is the British identity? And then when he goes to make Lawrence of Arabia, he essentially makes T.E. Lawrence kind of this representative of the confusing British identity. And it's symbolized in a thing I didn't realize. Obviously, I had always known, you watch the movie, and I'm not saying on the nose in a bad way. I'm saying it's blunt purposefully. That great scene toward the end of Act 1 when Lawrence and the boy come across the British motorcyclist whose face we'd never see, and all you get is the British motorcyclist yelling, "Who are you?
Yeah.
Who are you?" And we're right on Lawrence's face. No attempt, like we're being blunt about what the theme of this movie is. Who are you on Lawrence? A thing I didn't know. That's David Lean's voice. David Lean himself yelling, "Who are you?" at Lawrence of Arabia. Just I'm going to say it, baller move. I like that. I like that, David, that you're just going right at it and being like, you want to know what the theme of the movie is? I am literally going to tell you. Personally, I'm going to say it.
I mean, the way a lot of people on film Twitter act these days,
yeah.
they want more movies to have the director come on screen and tell you,
tell
here's
you.
the theme. Also, just as Bridge on the River Kwai was doing hey, Brits, being a Brit kind of sucks. It's a weird cult thing. We got to get it. Brief Account is the same thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Like,
that's very true.
Hey, it sucks being British. Like, we're just so repressed and weird. We just can't be with the people we love. Before we move on to other things, as we're still on this thing, of all the things this movie has influenced and inspired, Vice, you watch a lot of war movies and a lot of action movies. Is this this has to be the first movie, because I feel like a lot of war movies and action movies, more exploitation movies, do the Jose Ferrer character, the guy who's like the head of the platoon or the prison camp, who's a fucking rapist.
Yeah.
Who's just like creepily in the door, just staring, and it's like, oh, this guy's about to go raping.
Yeah.
Like, this is in Rambo 4. This is like Stallone straight up stole the Jose Ferrer character and made him the bad guy in Rambo 4 of all things. Like,
I'm trying to remember if I've seen anything prior to this like that, because I know like I mentioned before, like sadly, well, I mean, war is sad, but it's just particular rape is a one weapon of war, and so like I'm trying to recall, you don't see a lot of, it's kind of different context because our part of the problem currently is that it's an inside job. We're like it's being in the military, at least in the U.S. military, is dangerous for like it's full of such fucking sexual predators. But but no, like as far as your point, like cinema wise, yeah, I can't really think of like too many things where it's like a very explicit part of it. That partly because like people just this is the taboo. People so scared to do it. So that's part of why I guess I was so surprised to see here, not just because nobody talks about it, but like it's done so well for its time, I guess. Like he's still like a leering, like he has the almost trolling mustache kind of thing, but he's like they kind of they don't know that they have launched in their hands. So you think he's like when he's interrogating him at first, you think he's trying to like figure out, oh, is this a guy? Is this Lawrence? No, he's like, oh yeah, fresh fish. Oh, I got white meat now. That's what he's doing.
He grabs that titty.
Yeah,
He's like, ooh, you got some white skin. This is gonna be interesting.
I mean, I will say, when you're talking about that, one thing that I think that's present in, I mean, first off, you do see it a lot, kind of the reverse in a lot of I would say, somewhat more hacky Vietnam movies of the era, where like you'll always have a scene where like one of the bad soldiers is about to assault a woman in a village, and then our main soldier goes, "Stop it! What are you doing?" But I think the interesting thing about the sexual assault scene, the way that Lean plays it, is that you're right. You don't necessarily see it a lot in war movies, but what you do kind of see it in some ways is British adventure stories prior to this, because not explicitly, right? But there is always this idea running through a lot of these, the Four Feathers-esque kind of, cracking British adventure stories and British colonial stories of not just, well, we're going to go to these men and they're savages, but like, yes, cannibalism's a factor, but there's also the idea of the threat of, you as a white British man being subjugated by one of these brutal animals, these men that are so ungodly that they would take other men in that fashion and all of that. Like that is a thing that is definitely present in a lot of those British adventure stories. And I say that because one of the fascinating things that Lean does with Lawrence of Arabia, remember, Seven Pillars of Wisdom was a huge hit. It was a popular book because it was, in a way, Lawrence himself is a good writer. He's a very good writer. The adventure stories sound adventurous, but what Lean is doing with Lawrence of Arabia isn't just reconciling the war. He's also making a movie that is a refutation of all of the British adventure novels. This is a refutation of Rudyard Kipling, right? This is a refutation of, this movie comes along later, but like the Michael Caine Zulu movie, like this is a refutation of British colonialism, and in that same way, like kind of examining that concept of this thing that is kind of omnipresent in these, in these British adventure stories of like, well, what would these savages do? What would these, especially because, in comparison, Lawrence is in the desert with the Arabs, the greedy, barbarous, cruel people, and then he's in the Turkish civilization, and that's when this happens. Which I think it's just a really compelling way to address that subject.
And speaking of taboos for the time, movies very homoerotic.
Oh yeah.
Very taboo at the time. And this was, again, in my brief research, I didn't read a fucking book like fucking like big money pants Mike over there.
Money pants Mike?
I don't know.
Think I'm sorry, you're saying I'm rich because I bought a book?
Well, no, you're rich because you live in your own fucking duplex, you bitch.
Yeah. Wasting money on books. What kind of bullshit is that? Get the fuck out of here.
Come on. All right, so I found that in an interview with the Washington Post in 1989, Lean said that Lawrence and Ali were written as being in a gay relationship. And then when asked about whether the film was, quote unquote, pervasively homoerotic, Lean responded, and this is a quote from Lean, "Yes, of course it is, throughout. I'll never forget standing there in the desert once with some of these tough Arab buggers, some of the toughest we had, and I suddenly thought, he's making eyes at me. And he was. So it does pervade it, the whole story, and certainly Lawrence was very, if not entirely, homosexual. We thought we were being very daring at the time. Lawrence and Omar, Lawrence and the Arab boys." He also compares Ali and Lawrence's romance in the film to the relationship in Brief Encounter. So he was very much kind of poking the bear with his $150 million war epic, the 1962 version of Oppenheimer.
Well, and Lawrence, notably, I'm going to forget the gentleman's name, the young boy's name, but Lawrence fell in love with a young man when he was in the desert. Now, there's no evidence that they had a sexual relationship, and the actual, Lawrence was interviewed and pressed many times on whether or not he was a homosexual, and by all accounts, it seems like he was one of these guys who had, he could romantically fall in love with other men, but he just was repulsed by sex in general. It has some things to do with his mother and abuse as a child. I'm not going to get to it.
Doesn't matter what your sex is as long as your hands can hold a fucking switch.
But the tragedy of it in a way was some people like to romanticize the story, and Lawrence has himself had romanticized the story of he fell in love with this young man because he was one of the only boys that he met in the desert who could actually write in Arabic.
Hmm.
And he talked about, like, one of the things he loved about this boy was he felt like, I don't want to. They're sending me out here. This is before he was part of the Arab Bureau, right? This was during his journey as a younger man. They're sending me out here to try and anglicize these Arabs. I don't want to anglicize this boy. I want to help him become the best Arab he can be. Um, and it seemed like this young man was a guiding force for Lawrence, that he had this idea of like, well, once I unite the Arabs as their own nation, this will be a perfect place for him. Tragically, that young man died in 1916. Lawrence didn't find out until well into the war. But, Tom, you're talking about the relationship with Ali. Ali is absolutely, at least partly modeled after that. And one of the things I think is interesting, my partner and I watched it. She was seeing it for the first time. And she clicked into that right away, that there was this tension between them. But even she said, like, it doesn't seem like a sexual thing so much as it genuinely is like there is a romance between them. There is a love there. It's not just an attraction, right? It's not just a physical thing. It's like you genuinely see that Ali comes to love Lawrence. And so when the, no prisoners massacre happens, like, it breaks his heart. There's a genuine love there. So
And they emphasize that one more time at the very end, where Ali's last scene, where he's arguing with the other, like, why do you weep? Like, he's, Lawrence is stuck in the quagmire of politics, trying to, now that they're in Damascus, trying to, figure out run the city, and he's kind of like, he's lost him to this world, and he won't get him back again. And you see him crying about it, like, like he loved the man he loved, the brother in arms, and the man he loved he's gone now. It really is a tender moment, like, it's just but it's tender. Like, you see, he's like, he's crying, but like, he pulls his dagger out. It's like, I'm still. Like, it's that I don't know, that red. It's a very distinct type of red blooded that Arabic machismo, I guess it is. Like, like, how you like? I was so, like, it was such a weird thing. In Afghanistan and Iraq, I would see the ANSS and the Afghanistan National Guard, the Iraqi soldiers. They would often, if they're like bros, they'll hold hands and like hold pinkies and stuff. Like, and we had to get this explained to us as dumb Americans, that like, it's not like all overtly homosexual or gay, but like, it could be, but it wasn't, that concept wasn't the same to them. It's like again, it sounds hypocritical or even confusing to us that homosexuality is not being gay. Like, it just this is how men interact when they're friends or lover or in love. And that's what it is. Like, that came from from centuries of their having to like trust each other to survive in the harshest environments with the closest bonds. That's just what it is. And even now, to a lot of, in all warriors cultures throughout history, the bond between comrades in war becomes that strong, sometimes stronger than intimate relationships with men and women, or partners. That's just how it is. So yeah, that's definitely part of. You see that here in the movie, and then but they don't they don't need to question it. They don't need to like put a question on it. It's just that you just see them unfurl that as weird as Lawrence is, people love him all the same, and unfortunately, as it shows, he can't love him back, which is kind of one of the tragedies of it all.
Well, shit. I mean, to kind of put an even finer point on the fact that they were kind of a couple and all of that, the very last thing Ali says to Lawrence is, blah blah blah. I'm gonna go off to this place. I forget what city he says. I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna become a politician. Just like, yeah, I'm gonna become a piece of shit like you because none of this mattered. It's just like, that's the kind of thing like you would say to someone as you're breaking up. Oh yeah, like. Instead of saying like, oh, I'm gonna go fuck everybody at a club tonight, it's like, no, I'm gonna go to another city and I'm gonna become a piece of shit politician because of what you did to me, you fucking asshole.
Speaking of politicians, I want to talk a bit more about Prince Faisal, because of course one of the better scenes in the film, one of my favorite scenes in the film, is the return of Prince Faisal, because we see him at the beginning, and he is such a, he plays it when we see him in the film. He's mostly interacting with Lawrence, right? And being like, yes, young man, you can lead us to Damascus. You can lead us to Aqaba. You're so wise. You're so great. And if you watch those early scenes, you might just read it as like, Faisal thinks he's found a kindred spirit. Later, the photographer comes along and he's like, oh, you want someone for your American war propaganda? Lawrence is your man. So, okay, maybe there's admiration. Last time we see Faisal, he's sitting at the table, divvying up the nations.
Mhm.
And he has that line, I think we'll all be glad to be done with Mr. Lawrence. And it's like you realize in that moment, like Lawrence was as much a useful tool for Faisal as he was for the Brits. Now, I want to also note, because I think this is a fascinating bit of historical context here, what goes on with Faisal's bloodline. By the time the movie comes out, remember this movie's coming out in 1962. In 1958, Faisal's grandson is killed during the 1958 Iraqi military coup. So by the time this movie's coming out, the descendants of Faisal and his hard-won, land taken away in a military coup. But before you ask, no, not that one. Because this is the 68 coup in that's 58. 10 years later in 1968, the leaders from that coup would then be ousted by, everybody say it together, Saddam Hussein.
Listen, we love a sequel. We love a
It's-
sequel. And honestly,
by acclaimed novelist Saddam Hussein.
the 58 revolution and all that, and Faisal's grandson being killed in that, 100% part of like going through Lean's mind making this movie.
Yeah.
Which again gives you that hindsight ending that we have in 1962 of just like this was kind of an inflection point, and we fucked up.
Yeah.
We fucked it up.
But that everybody fucked it up because you have those
Well, that's
moments.
it. Yeah, everybody fucked everything
the-
up.
The Arab Council is saying there's a fire. Well, let that part of the city just burn. We don't give a shit.
Yeah.
And then you cut back to the British going, so if we let that burn, they'll probably give this place up, right? Like every single person is just like, I don't know, let it burn down and maybe we'll get something good out of it.
Yeah, I like that. The Prince is like the kind of the ultimate realization of who he is. Like he's in some cases shrewder. Yeah, he's a shrewder, smarter politician than all of the squabbling Brits we see. All those supposedly civilized people. He's playing he's playing 4D chess. He's like he mentions to the well you're just a general. I'm a king. Like it's like wow, like this guy really like again that kind of reinforces that the otherness of the Arabic people are just savages. Like they're royalty. They've maintained their empires for centuries, and of course now even as it's being fucked up, there's still somebody there who like has a mind right on the mind on the prize, even after all this shit. But of course, as we've seen in history, it'll be all for naught. Actually, you know what? It's actually a good point. I want to. We're running low on time, but I wanted to bring this up because you mentioning like the current state of Iraq is kind of reflected from this inflection point. So before this is not about the movie itself specifically, but just we got you asked me earlier about my context with the history and so forth. And one of the things that I read about recently and studied is what they called him Lawrence of Afghanistan. It's a very famous story from a few years ago about a real life U.S. Green Berets Special Forces person, Major Jim Gant, and essentially he was a special operator in Afghanistan, and his whole thing was the tribal stability operations, where instead of like how the global war and terror, post 9/11 was throwing a huge money and resources at these countries, he and a small group of people went to these isolated tribal areas in Afghanistan, established real connections with the tribal leaders, and eventually started getting victories against the Taliban and against all the Taliban-related affiliates. There was like kind of famously real progress, or the first real tangible progress in that in OEF as it was called during freedom. So much that you even got pressed by General Petraeus and to other high-ranking officials lauding Major Gant, but then the next part of the story is his eventual ousting and his downfall, because he himself was a Iraqi veteran of multiple Iraqi tours before his move to Afghanistan, and many combat situations, many injuries, so terrible PTSD, terrible chronic pain, So he ended up being kind of addicted to painkillers and alcohol and stuff. So that began to cloud his judgment, or as it's been reported in his process. But also, and there's a book about this, kind of part biography, part news reporting, where there was a news reporter, Ann Tyson, who was there embedded with these soldiers. Ended up having an affair, and so essentially became his wife. The actual tribes people, when they would come to his force, they would say, "Oh, it's Jim's wife." It was, and he basically, in the movie, like you see, Lawrence is he's distinct with his white gown, his white Arabic sheriff gowns, and Jim Gant kind of did the same thing. He had the Pashtun full robe, the full mustache, the full hat, and everything. He was embedded as much as anybody ever could. In this book, you read that the tribal leaders considered them like brothers, an actual like blood brother. That's how strong they got. But again, like he basically just like the way all this kind of story goes, he just got in too deep. Like his own psychosis, his own, because he also along with his the tribal mentality, he also had a very like strong like a Spartan warrior bullshit going on too in his mind, which is kind of par for course for Special Forces guys, but like they're kind of inherently well, no, I shouldn't say it like that. It's very easy to lose your head in that world, or to go over the deep end. They're always on the edge. That's literally. So that's how he's just another victim of that, and he just kind of went into his own mind. There's even the part excerpt in the book where he actually has a shura with a Taliban leader, and the Taliban leader is impressed with Jim's prowess, and he asks him, "You should come fight with us, the Taliban." And according to Jim, he says he laughs and stops for a minute, and he says, "Do not ask me that again, or I'll kill you." Because in his mind, he's like, maybe I could join it. Maybe I could join the Taliban. Maybe I could be a force for tribal good. Like that's how that's how deep he was in. But like, and again, like that's in that culture, in that tribal warrior mindset, that makes perfect sense. I can defeat my enemy by ruling them. But no, you're still U.S. You're still U.S. conscripted soldier, and that's treason. Like so. So again, I want that story really got to me when I heard about it a few years ago, especially like when I was in Afghanistan and Iraq, and the other part of the downfall, like the kind of general betrays this owned him, and all those politicians and high ranking generals like kind of disowned him. But it was like even though he had so much progress, actual effective warfighting abilities. So yeah, I always think about that. Maybe that's my strongest link to this film, because again, I see that the actual historical context it's depicting, even with all of its myth making, directly influences our real world history to this fucking day, and what I see, and people like Lawrence, who look these interesting, unusual, unique people, they're still caught in the same fucking cycle, the same trap of having to be make themselves myths and icons, having to buy their own bullshit to be effective. You just and it's just so again, it's sad. Like in the end of the film, Lawrence is chewed up and spit out. He's done. He's a shell of himself, and he's like, the last scene. Oh, it's time to his driver. It's time to go home. He's like, what? Like he can't even process the concept of home anymore, because everything he had was in the desert, and now he's lost it. And what else is there in his life?
And to almost kind of end this discussion, I guess, before the actual end, but like to end it at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
That kind of a way, a lot of, you hear a lot of stories about soldiers that come home with PTSD or whatever. And as someone with PTSD, I kind of understand this idea too. He's back home, and how does he die? Driving like an asshole on his motorcycle, like looking for that rush.
Yeah.
Because he thinks he can't die. He still believes his own myth from the fucking desert. He's looking for that rush, and what happens? Goes off the road and he fucking dies. And you know what? You're just a human being.
Yeah.
What I love about that framing is when you watch the movie at the beginning. I mean, obviously, first we just get an overhead shot of him with jaunty Maurice Jarre music. We didn't even talk about the Maurice Jarre score, which I love. It's one of my favorite movie scores. But that jaunty music as he's fixing his motorcycle with the credits, where you're like, I feel like I could be watching The Sound of Music right now. Like,
Yeah.
it's very cheery. But when you watch the movie the first time at the beginning and he's riding the motorcycle, Tom, like you say, like he thinks he can't die, right? And that's one way of reading Lawrence. What I love is that by the end, when the last thing we see is Lawrence, essentially like lost in the car, Holmeser, and he watches the motorcycle pass by and kick the dust back, it raises the question every other time you watch it that we'll never know. It raises the question, was he riding the bike that recklessly because he thinks he can't die, or was he riding the bike that recklessly because he hopes he can?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that ending really recontextualizes it, where there is that point, because he does die so young, and there is that wonder of like, well, would Lawrence have been happier if he had died in battle? Like, would he have felt more valid?
Yeah.
So there's that element. Again, obviously, there's a lot of meat left on the bone. We could talk about this movie into infinity. We could talk about it longer than the movie itself. I mean, you acknowledged up top, Vice, the match cut, like one of the most famous shots in film history, and there's so much to talk about this movie. We barely even touched on that. And the editing, the incredible editing, and the incredible cinematography. But I just want to kind of, before we wrap up talking the Oscars, Vice, did you have any kind of last licks you want to talk about with anything about this film?
Oh no, just like I said, like that story I mentioned with from T. Lawrence to Jim Gant to all the people in between. Once again, the power this movie has radiates not just with cinematic language, and like this is a very much a war film. In that this stuff is still so relevant today. People be getting lost to the system, and some of these some of these the way brilliance and brilliance and majesty is wasted in these grabs for power, as opposed to instead of building society up, we're just using it for power plays. So yeah, all that, all the stuff that's in this movie, even though it's of its time, is still very much so important now. Again, not just for cinematic reasons, but just as a story about us. Yeah, it's fantastic film.
So, without further ado, now we get to play the game. It's actually been nearly 2 hours since I read the registry statement, so we'll see what's retained.
Hour and a half, excuse me. We
Tom,
got deep in before we got to the statement.
That's fair. Tom, how do you think Lawrence of Arabia fared at the Academy Awards that year?
Well, I think it got 7 wins.
Okay, so tell me, interesting call. Tell me, so what do you think it got? What did it get nominations for? What did it win? I want to know. This is how we break it down.
It won picture, director, score, cinematography, screenplay, production design. I don't know. I know Peter O'Toole was nominated. He lost to Gregory Peck for Kill a Mockingbird. Remember when they made a sequel to that book where Atticus Finch was racist?
Yeah.
I'll just skip that one.
Yeah.
That's truly one of the most weirdest moments of pop culture, where it's just like, hey, we made a sequel to Kill a Mockingbird. I mean, okay, Atticus is racist now.
Well, because you remember the whole thing was, it was like they were like, oh, there's actually a sequel to Kill a Mockingbird. Oh my God, wow. Then they went, well, it's actually based on an earlier draft to Kill a Mockingbird. Okay. And it was like, she didn't want it released. So why is it released? She changed her mind now. Okay. She also might have dementia. Do you think that's why she changed her mind?
Who can say?
Do you think? Well, Tom, kind of, yes, you're partly right. I mean, obviously, it does win Best Picture. The other nominees that year, I think, are fascinating because it does kind of point to what a year this was. The other nominees were The Longest Day, the film about the invasion of Normandy, which has every actor you've ever heard of in it and has all of the characters speaking their actual languages, which is very cool to watch. So the French characters are speaking French, the German characters speak German, etc. So that's very interesting. Another war movie, contrast that. The Music Man, the big musical, Mutiny on the Bounty, but not the good one, the one where Brando's doing the weird accent. And of course, To Kill a Mockingbird. Of those, The Music Man and To Kill a Mockingbird also in the registry. It was also nominated for Best Director, which it won. Nominated for Best Actor for Peter O'Toole, losing to Gregory Peck in To Kill a Mockingbird. nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Omar Sharif.
Yeah. Wow.
Lost to Ed Begley for Sweet Bird of Youth. It was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, because it's adapted from Seven Pillars of Wisdom, and loses to Kill a Mockingbird. It was nominated for Best Original Score, which it won, Best Sound, which it won, Best Art Direction Color, because remember, they split, in these years, they would split the categories color and black and white. So this is how Lawrence of Arabia gets some wins over Mockingbird, too. So Art Direction Color it wins, Cinematography Color it wins, and Best Film Editing it wins. So, interestingly, while we can now watch it, especially compared to, like, no disrespect to Ed Begley, he's fine in Sweet Bird of Youth, that should be Sharif's Oscar, but it is this thing where you have to consider, like, O'Toole and Sharif were not household names at that point at all. They were new guys on the block. So, you get this sense that they were like, well, we got to give it to Gregory Peck. He's Gregory Peck, not this young upstart. And Omar Sharif, too, like, not this young upstart.
This
But
young brown
nevertheless,
fella.
yeah.
Well,
But
Omar Sharif
nevertheless-
also gets his, his consolation prize, Dr. Zhivago.
Well, Dr. Zhivago and Funny Girl.
Hmm.
That's the even wilder one. Like, consider the fact, I was talking about this with my partner, 'cause I was like, Omar Sharif, right, was so hot. And I just mean, like, physically, just so attractive, so undeniable, that even 60s Hollywood was like, we're racist. We're real racist. Even we can't avoid making him Barbara Streisand's love interest in one of our biggest movies. That's how big it was. All that being said, that was Lawrence Arabia. Vice, thank you so much for joining us for this episode. And thank you so much for being, as I said, our unofficial war correspondent here on You're Missing Out for a third year in a row.
Yeah, I gotta thank you guys. Like always, you forced me to fill in my cinematic gaps. These are. I mean, it's so stupid to say. We gotta make you watch some of the greatest films of all time. But I guess that's part of the fun of the podcast itself. Is like going through the registry, and kind of realizing these aren't just there for posterity's sake. These are fucking phenomenal pieces of art. And so yeah, it's just it's just so. But I guess it's fun that I have some of my good friends that I haven't seen in a while. Help me, get me doing this stuff. It's a really great experience for me, honestly.
Vice, that's true. Vice, that's true in most cases. But you've got the video here. You can see all three of our faces right now, because I do have to tell you, next season there's potentially 3 different war movies on the table. I just want you to know.
Oh boy!
So you get the call that 2 of them are World War I movies.
Okay.
Paths of Glory. And there's also the silent film, The Big Parade. Depending on how broad you want to get with war, next season there's also a movie set during the Civil War and after the Civil War. I just want you to know, in case you want to be here for 2 hours of me and Tom going...
No, 2 hours of Mike doing that and me saying something that makes him go, Tom, stop!
But anyway, so just know next season, many different ways to go with how we define a war film. And we hope you'll come back for whichever of those.
I got a fucking choice. You know what I'm coming for. But the birth, nation, death of this podcast is going to be.
It is. Can I tell you, anytime somebody has talked to us and gone, who are you going to get for that? My answer has typically been, I know someone whose answer will either be, oh, hell yes, absolutely, or fuck you. No middle ground.
Wouldn't it be funny if he was like, no, I actually want to do What's Opera Doc? Well, Bugs waging war on the audience.
Can I tell you, Tom? I think if that's the episode we end up doing, Vice will be talking about Birth of a Nation, while you and I will keep trying to shift the conversation to What's Up, Radoc, or anything else. Because Vice is going, so those guys in those hoods, and you and I going, Bugs Bunny's fun, huh? He wears a little helmet.
Me and Vice are gonna be like a tennis match that never ends. Just
it'll be that Richard Pryor Chevy Chase sketch from SNL back in the day. Word associations. It'll be the fear. But Vice, thank you so much for joining us. Before you go, please throw out any plugs for social media or your very good, very popular podcast or anything else you want to plug.
I don't know, popular. We're all right though. No, so thank you guys for having me. And if you're not familiar with my writing, my work already, my main thing I do currently, for I guess long term, till I keel over is I am one of the co-hosts of the Action for Everyone podcast. It's A4E podcast on the podcast in channels and such. So you got me and my friend Liam O'Donnell, the director of Skyline, Beyond Skylines, and Skylines, these monster movies, and our friend Mike Scott, the podcast master. We talk about the action movies from the past, present, and upcoming um, projects with a vast array of industry personnel, film writers, and just cool people. And again, the point being, action for everyone. People can say, some people call them dad movies, quote unquote, or they might be conservative leaning, which is not a bad problem. But people might think that way and avoid action movies. But no, like action, as I say, is for everyone. There's all kinds of elements of them that are for everyone to enjoy. That's what we're all about. But yeah, so I'm on actually a free podcast. Yeah, and otherwise, yeah, you can find me on the social media accounts. I'm on the Instagrams and the letterboxes. So I'll probably put my review of Loans for Reba finally here on Letterbox. Spoiler, 5 stars. At the Instagram letterbox at VyceVictus. And as I always say, I'm on these streets. You might see me at the Lincoln Center IMAX. Check me out there, or the Limax in Fresh Meadows in Queens. Probably too. Fake ass.
If you're at a movie theater and you smell the wafting cement sensation of cheeseburgers,
Oh yeah,
In a pocket,
you might
yeah.
you might be in the area of
you're the
a wild
miss
vice victus.
of the power of Vice. Yes, I'm on these
A wild
streets.
vice victus has appeared.
Vice, man, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for coming on
Man, this
every
was the
season.
best.
We look forward to having you on again next year, but everybody else, stick around. We'll be right back with our picks for the National Film Registry.
The National Film Registry isn't some fixed object, frozen in time. It's always growing, adding new titles every year. These annual selections are made by the National Film Preservation Board, with members and representatives from organizations like the Academy, the DGA, and the AFI coming together to debate and decide. But they don't just pull titles out of thin air. They pull from the public, people like you and me, who can submit their nominations for the registry in the form on the Library of Congress's website. What we do, at the end of every episode, is have Mike and Tom pick films not yet in the registry that they feel should be, inspired by that day's topic. At the end of each season, those films will be formally submitted to the National Film Registry for consideration on behalf of You're Missing Out. The only criteria? It must be an American film that's at least 10 years old. Here are today's picks.
So I'm going to own this. I feel a little silly with this because there were a lot of sophisticated choices that I could make. I was between a number of things. I was desperately hoping that the movie The Message, the Anthony Quinn film, was even an American co-production or anything, so I could have put that up. I was looking at other films like The Lion in the Desert, the rare American-Libyan co-production. I was looking at things because I was thinking about it from an academic standpoint. But if I'm being honest with myself, I had to get really personal on this one in terms of Lawrence of Arabia is a movie that means so much to me and is a romance of the desert in some ways, and both myth making and kind of deconstruction, and ultimately a story about who is this man. And I fell in love with Lawrence of Arabia because it was kind of the next step up from a movie I fell in love with as a child, which I'm sure is discussed. Which is Disney's Aladdin. That was the movie that first kind of drew me to The 1001 Nights and drew me to all of this kind of the desert romance and all of that. And as a blonde-haired, blue-eyed little white boy, sophisticate, would-be sophisticate, being drawn to the desert in much the same way that the T.E. Lawrence was with the books. But aside from just being connected to me personally there, I mean, there is no argument that Aladdin is a significant film, that you have those incredible, Ashman Menken songs. I think the other connective tissue there is the fact that there is something about Lawrence of Arabia when you see that performance by Peter O'Toole at the center of it, and also, Omar Sharif, but Peter O'Toole especially, it's a lightning bolt. You look at this and go, how did anyone do this? It's etched in lightning, that performance, even though it didn't win, the Oscar or anything like that. It's just etched in lightning. And similarly, even if you stripped everything else away from Lawrence of Arabia, it would deserve to be in the registry for that Peter O'Toole performance. In the same way, if you strip everything else away from Aladdin, that Robin Williams performance is one of the greatest comedic performances in cinema and arguably the greatest voice acting performance of all time. So it's a landmark film, part of that Disney Renaissance, one of the great films of that time. Some incredible sequences in it, some beautiful artwork. The animation on the genie is incredible. So there's just so much going for it, and I think that Aladdin should join Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast in the National Film Registry to cover that whole spread there, as long as we just skip over the Rescuers Down Under, because I don't think that's getting in anytime soon.
I was just thinking about epics, and this is maybe the greatest epic of all time. The scale of it, you wouldn't think a biopic about a guy, even during a war, would be this epic and have this sort of scale and this length, but then all the extras and the battle scenes and all of that, the historical aspect of it. So I was just thinking about epics, and we kind of just don't even get them anymore. I mean, we're in the summer of Oppenheimer, and that in its way is an epic, but it's still it's a movie about guys in rooms talking. It's still, relatively speaking, a small scale movie. And I gotta say, I think the last one of these is one of the best, I gotta say, and it is my pick. It's one of my favorites from this director, who is very hit and miss with me, despite people trying to reclaim him, and despite his new movie coming out seemingly playing within a similar wheelhouse again. My pick is Kingdom of Heaven, Ridley Scott's Crusades epic. The director's cut, not the theatrical cut. You gotta put it's a completely different experience. You understand why people fucking hated it when they saw the theatrical cut. You cut out what is it, 45 minutes, an hour of movie. You cut out the whole heart of the thing. It's a gorgeous movie. It's an epic movie. Just what Ridley was able to get on screen was astounding. You're not gonna. There's not a performance in there that you could put up against O'Toole or Sharif or even Quinn. Ridley was never that. Is not that kind of guy. You're really never gonna look at him and say, oh, he got this performance out of this actor, or this actor is the best part of one of Ridley's movies. I don't care what the Gaga stands say about House of Gucci. She was terrible in it. She was Russian. I don't get it. And she's an Italian from Brooklyn. I just don't understand that whole just the fucking, what did she get, a lesion in her brain making that movie? I don't know. But yeah, I think Kingdom of Heaven, and similar to what Lawrence of Arabia does, getting into the messy morality and the messy politics of that whole story and that whole era, that region of World War I. I think Kingdom of Heaven does a really great job of really, I guess you would say, get to the truth of the Crusades. Sort of not both sides it, but make it a complicated situation where you kind of just there's no winning in a situation like this, where everybody who's going off to die is kind of just there's no honor in this. Everybody's just gonna die for, kind of like World War I, just a complicated mess where nobody really knows what's happening. We're just fighting because they tell us there's honor in it. So yeah, I think Kingdom of Heaven deserves to be in the registry. One, because it's probably the last great epic of this kind we're ever going to get. Two, I think it's Ridley's best movie. That's just me. I think it's Ridley's best movie. Yeah, and I think it's a perfect pairing with Lawrence of Arabia in many ways. So yeah, Kingdom of Heaven, director's cut, my pick.
Let's all go to the lobby.
Thank you again to VyceVictus for joining us. Next week, we're discussing a film shot in one of the earliest film studios in America. Returning guest Bella Zadenberg is back for the 1917 film, The Poor Little Rich Girl. Don't forget to follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you again next time. Here on You're Missing Out.
They honor movies of historical, cultural, or aesthetic importance on the National Film Registry.